the class action possibilities. Okay, yeah. Okay, the possibilities also, so the Commission proposed also a possibility for NGOs or data protection authorities or masses of users to complain, which is also a good idea, but I don't know how they want to implement this. But I mean, this is the first communication, but I always say to politicians here that they have to be involved in the things the Commission works out, because this is what we have to be. This is what we have to implement afterwards, also here in Germany. And if we are talking about data protection here in Germany, we should think about how to bring our ideas into this directive. Again, the external aspects, I mean, the safe harbor agreement we heard since, or in between the last 10 years where it was enforced, so 10 years is now the safe harbor agreement, which is about, I said it already, the question of the applicable law, first of all, about the question if there is an adequate level of protection on the other side of the Atlantic, and the German data protection authorities came to the conclusion many times that this provision, this agreement does not work, which is obvious because there have been very few cases where individuals had the possibility to use the safe harbor agreement to complain on the other side of the Atlantic. And generally it's very hard to really enforce those provisions laid down in the safe harbor agreement. As I said, the alternative would be to say in data protection provisions, the EU law should be applicable also for data which have been transferred to third countries. Also, the Commission is already thinking about this, which is quite good. Then I will be very fast on the rest, which is more about data protection in the public sector, when we are talking about police and justice cooperation or judicial cooperation in the field of organized crime or terrorism. We had a big debate in the European Parliament about the SWIFT or the TFTP agreement. I think you all know about the question of transfer of banking data from the EU to the US for the purpose of analyzing it for terrorism, to fight terrorism, which has been adopted now in July after we had a rejection of the European Parliament, and they improved the provisions, but nonetheless it is an agreement which, like the data retention, uses mass data transfer and not anymore what we were used to in the past, individual data exchange measures on the basis of concrete investigations. And this is also the same when it comes to the passenger name records, the PNR package. This is about also a measure which is already applied since September 11th, that the US analyzes the passenger name records, so all the details of people going to the US by airplanes. They also do it with ships, but airplanes, this is the most important thing for them, and there we have big problems to implement data protection principles, because it is mainly about profiling, it is mainly about data mining, because they try to use those data like the telephone number, like the credit card number and so on, for profiling and for connecting those information to other information they have in other investigations. And this sets us in the situation that we have to think about in the European Union about what are we dealing with, and it's a little bit a problem because in the past everybody thought about, okay, in the future it's possible to have profiling or data mining, and we have to think about protecting people from being subject to those investigations, to those connecting different databases and so on. And everybody talking about the future and not about what's happening today. And when we talk about for example, with the Department of Homeland Security in the US, they always say, no, we don't do profiling. We just connect information, and we just want to see the whole picture. It's not profiling. It's not data mining. So sometimes a colleague of mine said it's a little bit like something makes knock 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 the whole time, and everybody knows it's a duck, but nobody's calling it a duck. So we try to avoid naming that profiling and data mining already is in place in many measures, and like the question of mass data storage, like the data retention, we have the same in the PNR case and in the SWIFT case. We have a problem on the European level, but all over Europe, this is also affecting the member states, that we have absolutely a vast amount of agreements, of agencies, of measures taking up processing data, transferring data, and we always have different data protection rules applied to those agreements. We have different data protection provisions in the agencies, treaties like Europol and so on. Everybody has its own data protection principles, and it is a big need to bring those agreements together on one basis, and those laws on one basis, and therefore we need, I think, the data protection directive, the new data protection directive, as a basis for all data transfer and data sharing agreements. Therefore, we are just right now working on a data protection framework agreement with the US, which is especially on those cases like SWIFT or PNR, to build up one standard for all the agreements, one minimum standard where there are enforceable rights for all the citizens, and especially the principles of the European Union laid down in the agreements with the United States. We are at the moment working on it, and I hope we are coming forward. So no, I was very long, but if there are any questions, you can perhaps pose them after we have the other speakers.
Yeah, I suggest we first have the three speakers, and then a round of questions, and then discussion and so on. Jérémie, you're next.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation, the opportunity to speak about this here. I recognize some of the faces I met before, either in the CCC conferences or lobbying here and there, counter-lobbying on our issues. I'll try to be quite quick so we have time for discussion afterwards, and I'll try not to step on Joe's lawn too much. Well, I'm the co-founder and spokesperson of la Quadrature du Net. Some of you may know about it. We're a citizen toolbox, basically, to allow everyone to understand legislative and non-legislative process that hurts fundamental rights relatively to the internet, and tools to allow everyone to participate, to put its citizen foot in the door of such process. I will try to detail what are the common patterns of different issues we've been dealing with, trying to connect the dots, and explain you why I think it is extremely important to do this job of at least connecting the dots between some issues that may look very different at first, but are very much linked. What we do all the time is, with those tools I was referring to, trying to raise awareness on a series of situations where most of the time corporate interests, but also political interests, are willfully trying to invade our fundamental freedoms for serving economical or political interests. We are trying to build political momentum around those issues, either to win within the legislative context, to win within a certain dossier, a certain legislative area, and to win victories on the text themselves. But also, it is very important that we gain political momentum outside the legislative context, to project ourselves and project our issues in a much longer time frame than the one that is the usual term of the average elected representative. We know that ultimately an open internet where knowledge will be shared, where where sharing will be valued over control and enforcement, is the inevitable winning, is the inevitable victory. The question is, how long will it take? Will we have to go through some kind of dark ages before we can reach that renaissance, or can we go there quicker? So we always have to keep in mind that we are projecting ourselves and our issues in a much longer perspective than this or that text, this or that issue in this or that parliament. This is what helps you to stay alive. So we have to deal with an ever-evolving threat. The political nature of the threat is changing all the time, and therefore the tactics of our opponents is changing all the time, and we have to adapt to it. The example I want to take here to discuss with you is the various steps we've witnessed and documented and participated in the war on sharing that the entertainment industries are waging against their customers. So you're all familiar with that. It's an ideological battle in which propaganda is used to make everyone believe that sharing is bad. We all know that sharing is good, don't we? Okay, so this is how we need to win this battle. When everyone else will be as convinced as we are that sharing is good, that sharing is legitimate, then the question of changing the economical models, changing the laws, and changing that context of oppression and repression and attacking the fundamental freedoms will be obvious for everyone. So it is an ideological fight, and we've seen along the years how powerful and dangerous are our opponents, and I will, yes, all of this was the introduction. I'll get into the subject. You've all heard of the French Hadopi, 3 strikes law. Well, we've been here before. Actually, we founded la Quadrature du Net in March 2008, which corresponds to the leaking of the first draft of the Hadopi law. But all of the co-founders were activists for much longer time, either on the Software Patents Directive and so we were all fighting against the previous copyright law before Hadopi, that was called DATSI, and that was a transposition of the EU CD Directive, European Union Copyright Directive of 2001. At that time, Nicolas Sarkozy was the president of UMP, the majority party, the right-wing party, and was very strongly pushing, as a president of the party, to control the political group in the national parliament. So this law will get through. So in that DATSI law, we saw appearing a first version of what was later on nicknamed the 3 strikes.